Hello Year 11 and welcome to paper 2. So we know that paper 2, the superpower relations and Cold War paper, is the one that a lot of you find the most tricky. So the purpose of this video is to go through exam technique, how you answer questions, and to remind you of the content that's coming up as well. So the first thing I want to tell you is that the grade boundaries on this particular paper are quite tight. It's approximately 3 to 4 marks per grade boundary. So what that means is it's really important to have a go at every single question, even if you're not sure, because as with all history papers, we mark positively. We can't take marks away from you. We are looking for opportunities to award you marks. So answer every single question, even if you're not too sure. So on the screen in front of you, you've got the question stems and how many marks each question is worth, as well as how many minutes approximately you should be spending on each one. So just pause the video for a moment to read that slide really carefully so you know which questions you should be spending the longest amount of time on and how many marks they are worth. The first question that you're going to have is your consequences question, and this is a lovely question because you will be describing one consequence of one event and then one consequence of another event. So you have two opportunities to demonstrate to the examiner that you know what a consequence is. A consequence means something that comes after an event or because of an event, and a consequence can be positive or negative. The trick is to make sure that you're writing about what came after the event in the question and not the event itself. So on the screen we have an example in red of a poor answer to this question and an example in green of a strong answer to this question. The question in this example is describe one consequence of the U-2 spy plane incident in 1960. I'd like you to pause the video for a moment so that you can read the red example and then the green example. So pause your video now. Now you should have noticed that the difference between them is this. The one in red describes the event in the question. So it describes the U-2 spy plane incident. And that's why it's in red, because it hasn't really answered the question. Because the question asks about a consequence. So what happens because of the U-2 spy plane incident. So the answer in green is strong because it writes about what happened next. What did the U-2 spy plane incident cause? So again, just making sure that when you get this question, you're writing about what happens afterwards and not the event in the question itself. So question 2 will be our narrative question, and we need to think with a narrative you're really looking for about 3 to 4 events linked together that you can write about. So our example here is a narrative account analysing the events of the Berlin crisis 48 to 49. Now a sentence starter, if you're stuck for this question, just start with in the beginning and that will get you into the kind of flow, because that's often the barrier for this question. So in the beginning, and write down what happens at the beginning of that story. Useful phrases to link events together is this meant that, as a result of this, and then explain how they link together. So on the example in front of you, you've got those linking sentences in green. So pause the video for 2 minutes and read through and identify how events are linked together. So the final question is an importance of question. You'll be given a choice of 3 and you're going to write about 2 of them. You'll notice this is worth 8 marks per question, which means it needs to be longer than your consequences of response. So what we're looking for here is a reason why an event is important for a situation and trying to give 2 examples of that. So for example, if you have a question which asks you to explain the importance of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan for superpower relations, you're going to look at what happened after the invasion to the relationship between the USA and the Soviet Union and try and give 2 examples of that. So in this case, the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan was important for superpower relations because it made relations worse and decreased tension. So that's my overall point. I'm saying it's important because it's made relations worse and it's increased tension. I then need to give 2 examples of how it made relations worse and increased tension. So I've looked at the end of détente and SALT II and the Carter Doctrine, and then my second factor is the election of Reagan. But I'm constantly using the words of the question throughout my answer. When this style of question has come up before, it predominantly asks about the importance of an event for superpower relations, so the relations between the USA and the USSR, and they're either going to get better or worse, and you need to give examples of that. Or it will ask you about the development of the Cold War. So again, does it increase tension or decrease tension? The other way that it might come up is to ask you how an event affects Soviet control of a particular area. So in other words, does it lead to an increase in control or a decrease? But either way, it's important that you try and give 2 examples to support your point. So if relations are worse, give 2 examples of how it became worse because of that event. And now year 11, we come to the content that's going to be covered in your mock paper tomorrow. So again, you were given this in your mock preparation booklet before half term. It hasn't changed. So you need to know about the outcome of the Potsdam Conference, the formation of NATO and how it led to increased tension between the superpowers, the impact of the refugee crisis in Berlin in the 1950s, the events of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the impact of the Soviet invasion on Afghanistan, including the Carter Doctrine and the Olympic boycotts. If you're not sure where to find that content, on the screen in front of you, you've got the relevant pages of the revision guide. And on the next slide, I'll show you how you can log into your revision guide if you have forgotten or lost the paper copy. So this is the page that was in your preparation for mocks revision booklet. There's a QR code that you can scan, which will take you straight to the Pearson Revise online, and you're going to log in with Microsoft. And if you click that button, it will take you in using your school credentials, which means you'll be able to access all of the units. If you haven't already saved the units, you scroll down once you've logged into Humanities, History, Edexcel, and then you're going to look for superpower relations and Cold War. We've used this quite a lot. You would have used it in your lessons, so this should be familiar to you. If you've lost your mock preparation booklet and the tasks in it, that's on Arbor. So if you're struggling to find this, go onto Arbor, open up the mock preparation booklet, and it will all be there for you. Good luck.